Half of all people in the United States are not meeting basic magnesium requirements daily. That number comes directly from a published peer-reviewed study in the journal Nutrients. What makes it striking is how quietly it hides behind symptoms nobody ever connects together. People are not walking around thinking they are deficient in any particular mineral at all. They are simply assuming this is just how they feel now, and they stop questioning it. Sleep that used to feel deep now feels shallow and completely unrefreshing every single morning. Stress that simply will not leave, no matter how much you try to manage it. Muscles that stay tight far longer than they should, like a low-grade injury that never heals. Energy that drops off too early, and you blame it entirely on getting older now. None of those symptoms alone point clearly back to one single missing mineral in your body. But when they start quietly stacking together like this, they are rarely as random as they seem. This is not some rare, obscure problem affecting only a small and unlucky group of people. It is a quiet, widespread issue that most people never identify until things have already gone far. What makes it even harder to catch is that standard blood work almost always completely misses it. Most people get their labs back, everything looks perfectly fine, and they leave completely reassured. But there is a critical difference between what shows up in blood and what lives inside cells. Understanding that difference is exactly where this entire story starts to become genuinely important. Magnesium deficiency does not announce itself as one clear and obvious problem you can easily name. It shows up instead as a cascade. One system compensates, and then another begins quietly straining. Over time, completely different symptoms appear that all trace directly back to the same upstream issue. If the deficiency had been caught early, the entire cascade could have been avoided altogether completely. So here is what we are going to walk through from the very beginning all the way through. First, exactly why magnesium deficiency stays so easy to miss for such a surprisingly long time. Then, how it systematically hits different parts of the body, one system at a time, quietly. After that, how to actually fix it in a simple, consistent, and genuinely sustainable daily way. And along the way, there are bizarre, unexpected signs most people have never once connected to magnesium. These are some of the most telling and completely overlooked signs you will ever come across here. But the science needs to be laid out first so that everything else makes complete and clear sense. Let us start with the blind spot, because this is where most people get genuinely and deeply confused. Only about 1% of the total magnesium in your entire body actually lives in your bloodstream. That is the hard part that makes this entire problem so incredibly difficult to detect early on. The rest lives inside your cells, your muscles, and stored deep within your bones at all times. Your body works remarkably hard to keep blood magnesium levels stable, especially to protect your heart. So when intake drops, your body does not panic at all. It simply begins quietly borrowing instead. It pulls magnesium directly from your muscles and bones to keep blood levels looking perfectly stable. That is exactly why a standard serum magnesium test can come back completely clean and normal looking. It can look perfectly fine on paper, even when your cells are deeply and seriously depleted inside. Research shows that red blood cell magnesium actually reflects your true body status far more accurately. This test looks at what is happening inside the cells, not just floating freely in the blood. So your labs can look completely normal while your body is genuinely and quietly running on empty. And once those internal reserves start getting pulled down, that is when the real cascade truly begins. The first system to actually feel the hit is not your muscles, it is your nervous system instead. This surprises most people because muscle cramps tend to get all the attention in these conversations always. But the nervous system takes the very first hit, and that is what sets everything else in motion. Magnesium plays a critical role in activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming side. Without enough magnesium, your body has a much harder time fully shifting out of fight or flight. Magnesium also binds to GABA receptors in the brain, and GABA is essentially your brain's brake pedal. When GABA is working well, it quiets neural activity down and allows your brain to fully shut off. When magnesium is low, GABA signaling drops, and your brain essentially gets stuck in the on position. That is when sleep gets shallow, and thoughts start racing at night without any clear reason why. That is also when stress starts feeling so much louder and harder to shake than it ever did. There is a cortisol piece here too, and it makes the entire situation significantly worse over time. A study in the Journal of Neuropharmacology showed that low magnesium directly increases cortisol production significantly. It activates a specific brain region responsible for controlling your entire daily stress response system. So now you have less calming input coming in and more stress hormone going out at the same time. In real life, this looks like not bouncing back from stress the way you once easily used to. Little things feel much bigger than they should, and your overall resilience keeps quietly getting worse. Your nervous system slowly loses its ability to buffer and absorb the pressure of ordinary daily life. You feel wired but exhausted, on edge at night, but completely flat and drained by midday always. That particular combination is one of the most overlooked and underappreciated signs of low magnesium today. And once the nervous system can no longer fully relax, the muscles become the very next stop here. Magnesium directly regulates how key minerals move in and out of your muscle cells constantly every day. Calcium triggers a muscle to contract, and magnesium is what allows that same muscle to fully relax. When magnesium runs low, calcium dominates, muscles tighten up, and they simply do not fully let go. That is where cramps show up. Tight calves, foot cramps, and constant restlessness throughout your legs at night. If you have ever been woken up suddenly by a sharp calf cramp, magnesium is trying to speak. The same thing also applies to the smooth muscles inside your entire digestive tract as well daily. These are the muscles you never think about, the ones quietly moving food all the way through. When those digestive muscles stay tense, movement inside the gut slows down consistently and significantly over time. That is why constipation often shows up right alongside muscle tightness and never feels like it belongs. They are deeply and directly linked together. Not a separate issue, but the same mechanism in a different place. So the cascade has moved from the nervous system through muscles and now into your digestion as well. But it does not stop there at all, and this is where it gets genuinely frustrating for most people. As intracellular magnesium continues dropping, your electrolytes and energy production also begin to slip noticeably away. Low magnesium directly disrupts the kidney channels that are responsible for recycling potassium back into your cells. When those channels get disrupted, the body starts excreting far too much potassium through the urine daily. So even if your potassium intake looks completely fine, your body can still end up functionally low. That is precisely why real muscle weakness shows up. Not just cramps, but genuinely poor actual activation. Muscles simply do not fire the way they should, and everything traces directly back to magnesium running low. You might lift something and feel genuinely weaker than before without any clear or obvious explanation why. That weakness is not about effort or motivation at all. It is a genuine mineral problem at the cellular level. At the same time, magnesium is also required for your body to produce any usable energy whatsoever. Your ATP, the energy currency of every single cell, only works when it is properly bound to magnesium. Without magnesium, energy production becomes deeply inefficient. You generate it, but never actually feel the payoff at all. That is when real fatigue sets in, low drive, low output, and a heaviness that simply will not lift. It is especially noticeable when energy demand goes up, like during stress, activity, or a lower carb diet. Most people in this state blame calories, carbs, or simple motivation for how completely flat they feel. But the bottleneck is often not fuel at all. It is the mineral that allows fuel to actually become energy. The gas is sitting in the tank, but the engine simply cannot process it without enough magnesium present. As all of this continues building, the vascular system also starts to quietly feel the accumulating pressure too. Magnesium plays a significant role in producing nitric oxide, which helps blood vessels properly relax and dilate. Without enough of it, vessels stay tighter than they should, and blood pressure begins climbing gradually over time. A published review found that adequate magnesium intake produced a meaningful and measurable reduction in blood pressure directly. The recommended daily intake is 420 milligrams for men and around 320 milligrams for women per day generally. But research shows that therapeutic intakes in certain depleted conditions can go meaningfully higher than those minimums safely. The gap between minimum intake and what a depleted body actually needs can be very significant and real. And finally, when all of this quiet compensation has been going on long enough, the bones begin paying too. The bones essentially become the last buffer in the body's long and quiet chain of magnesium compensation over time. Magnesium is required to activate vitamin D, and every single enzyme in that activation process genuinely needs it. It also helps move calcium out of the bloodstream and direct it properly into the actual bone tissue. Without enough magnesium, calcium simply does not end up where it truly belongs, which is inside your bones. Over time, that leads to weaker joints, higher fracture risk, and progressively declining overall bone density throughout. By the time bones are affected, the deficiency has usually been quietly building for a very long time already. All of these stages are deeply connected. None of them are isolated or random events happening by coincidence. They are one long chain, and magnesium is the missing link the entire chain quietly depends on always. Now, before talking about how to fix this, there is another important layer that most people completely miss. When people hear the word magnesium, they usually assume it is just one single and simple thing entirely. But magnesium always comes paired with something else, and that pairing changes everything about how it actually behaves. But first, let us cover those bizarre, unexpected signs that were mentioned right at the very beginning earlier, because these are signs most people have actually experienced themselves, but never once connected back to magnesium. Have you ever felt a buzzing or vibrating sensation just under your skin for absolutely no reason at all? Like your phone is vibrating in your pocket, but you check and it is completely and totally silent there. That sensation is caused by hyper-excitable peripheral nerves, and it happens directly when magnesium levels drop low. It is the exact same reason your eye randomly starts twitching out of nowhere for seemingly no reason. That random eye twitch is actually one of the clearest and earliest physical signs of low magnesium available. Most people dismiss it as tiredness or stress alone, but it is often the body sending a clear message. Another strange sign is that random jaw tightness, feeling like you are clenching without knowing exactly why you were. This is not always purely about stress, even though it can feel exactly like a normal stress response. It is a neuromuscular calcium regulation issue, and without enough magnesium, jaw tension just quietly builds and builds. You feel like your jaw is constantly engaged and tight, even while resting and feeling completely outwardly calm. Another surprisingly real sign is a sudden growing intolerance to loud noises and busy, crowded environments around you. Magnesium modulates NMDA receptors in the brain, and when it is low, your sensory gain actually heightens significantly. Things feel louder, more overwhelming, and you get overstimulated by things that used to never bother you before. Your social battery drains faster, and you feel genuinely irritated in environments that once felt completely fine always. This is very real, and it happens because your nervous system is running in a constantly overloaded state daily. And then there are heart palpitations that seem to strangely disappear completely once you lie down and rest. Magnesium affects cardiac ion channels, just like it affects every other muscle throughout your entire body constantly. When you are deficient, irregular beats become more noticeable, but lying down gently reduces the heart's overall workload. The palpitations seem to vanish, not because the underlying problem is gone, but because the pressure temporarily eases. These bizarre signs are all very different expressions of the same underlying problem, showing up in different locations. They are your body actively trying to communicate something important that most standard lab tests completely and consistently miss. Now, let us talk about the different forms of magnesium, because this really does matter a great deal here. Each form comes paired with a different compound, and that pairing changes what it does and where it goes. Knowing which form to use makes the real difference between actually fixing the problem and completely missing the target. First, there is magnesium chloride, which is highly soluble and breaks down very easily throughout the whole body. Chloride also plays a direct role in producing stomach acid, which naturally and gradually declines as we age. So magnesium chloride can support both magnesium levels and your overall digestion and mineral absorption, working together. However, it can be a little hard on the stomach, and taking too much will definitely cause diarrhea. It is not ideal for daily ongoing use, but works reasonably well for short-term quick replenishment when needed. Next is magnesium oxide, which contains a higher percentage of elemental magnesium on the label, but absorbs poorly. Some studies actually show absorption rates sitting as low as 4%, which makes it largely ineffective for replenishment. It is more commonly used as a laxative and can actually cause you to lose even more essential minerals. So even though the label number looks impressively large, very little of it actually reaches your circulation at all. Then there is magnesium citrate, which is bound to citric acid and is widely known for one specific effect. It pulls water into the intestines, creating an osmotic effect that reliably and effectively softens the stool over time. This makes it useful specifically for constipation, but not particularly effective for actually raising your magnesium levels overall. Then there is magnesium glycinate, which is genuinely very different from all the other available forms out there. Magnesium here is bound to glycine, which is a calming amino acid that deeply supports relaxation and rest. Glycine also lowers core body temperature and reduces nervous system activity to naturally promote better and deeper sleep. For sleep support and stress relief, magnesium glycinate is probably the single best and most well-rounded form available. It is a chelated form, which means it resists stomach acid and absorbs noticeably and reliably far better overall. You get solid absorption without any laxative effect, which makes it easy to use consistently every single night. Aim for 300 to 400 milligrams taken nightly, especially if your cascade started with sleep disruption or stress overload. Next is magnesium malate, which pairs magnesium with malic acid in a very specific and targeted and effective way. Malic acid plays a very direct role in cellular energy production deep inside the mitochondria where energy is made. It supports the transport of nutrients into the mitochondria and the entire critically important ATP generation process happening there. This is genuinely one of the best forms for energy, and it works from two completely separate angles simultaneously. If fatigue or muscle weakness is your main concern, magnesium malate is absolutely worth considering and trying first here. Then there is magnesium sulfate, which most people know far better simply as the very familiar Epsom salt form. Dissolving it in a warm bath may help calm sore and tight joints, but skin absorption evidence remains quite limited. Next is magnesium orotate, which combines magnesium with orotic acid for specific and targeted energy and recovery support.